Destiny River, an audio story. The storm came out of nowhere, a beast of thunder and rain tearing through the Wyoming night. Caleb Sterling, a lonesome cowboy with a past he'd rather forget, was leading his horse across an old wooden bridge when the world seemed to split apart. The green river below roared like a living thing swollen with the fury of the storm. Lightning cracked, illuminating the churning waters, and that's when he heard it, a cry, sharp and desperate, cutting through the thunder like a knife. Caleb froze, his hand tightening on the reins, his horse. Rusty snorted nervously. The cry came again, fainter but unmistakable, a woman's voice pleading for life. He squinted through the rain, his hat brim sagging under the downpour, and saw her, a figure thrashing in the river's grip, her dark hair whipping wildly as the current dragged her toward oblivion. No time to think. Caleb tossed his coat to the ground, kicked off his boots, and plunged into the icy water. The cold hit him like a fist, stealing his breath, but he fought the current, his arms slicing through the torrent. The girl was maybe 20 yards away, her hands clawing at the air, her traditional dress heavy with water pulling her under. He swam harder, the river fighting every stroke, trying to claim them both. When he reached her, her eyes were wide with terror, but she grabbed his hand with a strength that surprised him. Her fingers locked around his wrist like iron. Getting back to shore was a battle. The current yanked at them, rocks bruised his legs, but Caleb kicked with everything he had, dragging her toward the muddy bank. By the time they collapsed on solid ground, both were gasping, shivering, half-drowned. The girl coughed up river water, her long black hair plastered to her face. Caleb fell to his knees, his chest heaving, the storm still raging around them. She looked up at him, her eyes dark and deep, holding something he couldn't name. When she spoke, her English was careful, deliberate, but clear as a bell. "You saved my life," she said. It wasn't gratitude in her voice, it was something heavier, something that made the hairs on Caleb's neck stand up. "Anyone would have done it," he said, wringing water from his shirt, his voice rough from the cold. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they weren't true. Most men in these parts would have ridden past, especially if they saw she was from the tribes. Tensions between settlers and natives had been simmering for months, ready to boil over into blood. The girl stood slowly, water dripping from her hair. She studied him, her gaze sharp, like she was memorizing every line of his face. "My name is Ayana," she said. "And you are mistaken, Caleb Sterling. Not anyone would risk their life for someone like me." His breath caught. "How do you know my name?" he asked, the chill in his bones now more than just the cold. He'd never seen this girl before, not in town, not on the trails. Yet she spoke his name like she'd known him forever. Ayana didn't answer. She backed toward the tree line, her movements graceful despite the ordeal. "Tomorrow, when the sun is at its highest, you will see what your kindness has set in motion," she said, her voice carrying an eerie certainty. Before he could press her, she vanished into the shadows of the trees, leaving him alone with the storm and 100 questions that kept him awake all night. Caleb rode home through the rain, his mind spinning. The way she'd looked at him, the weight in her words, the impossible fact that she knew his name, it didn't add up. He couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just shifted like a river changing course. What had he awakened by pulling her from that water? And why did he feel like he was about to find out whether he wanted to or not? The next morning, Caleb woke to the sound of hooves, dozens of them, a rhythm like distant thunder rolling across the plain. He rolled out of his cot, his body still aching from the river, and peered through the single window of his cabin. The midday sun blazed high, and what he saw made his blood run cold. 5 groups of riders approached from different directions, their horses kicking up dust that shimmered in the light. Each group carried the colors and markings of different tribes, Shoshone, Arapaho, Cheyenne, and others he couldn't name. They moved with purpose, not the random wander of separate bands, but a coordinated plan. As they drew closer, Caleb saw they weren't armed for war. They carried bundles, decorated weapons, ornate containers that gleamed in the sunlight. They weren't here to fight, they were here to honor. His hand hovered near the revolver at his belt, but something told him he wouldn't need it. Not yet. The first group reached his fence line and stopped. An elderly man with silver braids dismounted his presence, commanding despite his age. Behind him, 4 other tribal leaders followed, each representing their own people. The gifts they carried weren't trinkets, carved eagle feathers, beaded ceremonial pieces, weapons that looked ancient and priceless. Caleb stepped outside his boots, crunching on the dry earth, his heart pounding. The silver-haired leader spoke first, his voice deep and resonant. "You are the one who pulled Ayanna from the river's grasp," he said. It wasn't a question. "I am Caleb," replied, his mouth dry. "But I don't understand why that brings all of you here." The old man's eyes softened, but there was a sadness in them Caleb couldn't place. "Because Caleb Sterling, you have done something that changes everything. Something that has not happened in 3 generations. Another leader, younger but no less dignified, stepped forward holding a bow polished to a deep shine, its wood inlaid with silver. "This belonged to my grandfather's grandfather," he said. "It has never been given to an outsider." A third man offered a ceremonial knife, its handle carved from bone and studded with turquoise. "This blade has protected our warriors for a century," he said. "Now it is yours." Caleb's mind raced. "I don't understand. I saved a drowning girl. That's what any decent man would do." The silver-haired leader's expression grew grave. "Ayanna is not just any girl, white man. She carries the blood of 5 tribes in her veins, Shoshone, Arapaho, Cheyenne, and others. She is the bridge daughter, the one foretold to bring unity or destruction." Caleb felt the ground shift beneath him. Foretold, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The elder nodded. "For 3 generations we have waited for a sign. The one who saves the bridge daughter from drowning will either unite our tribes in peace or scatter them in war forever. Your act of compassion has made you part of something greater than yourself." Caleb's hand tightened on the porch rail. "I didn't know," he said. "I was just trying to help." "That is why it matters," the younger leader said. "The prophecy speaks of one who saves without knowing, who chooses compassion, without understanding its cost." The gifts kept coming, a headdress adorned with hawk feathers, a necklace of bear claws, a painted shield that felt ancient. Each item carried a weight of trust from people who had learned to trust no outsider. But as the last gift was laid at his feet, the elder's face darkened. "There is something you must know," he said. "Not all tribes believe the prophecy speaks of unity. Some see you as the destroyer, not the uniter. They are coming." Caleb followed the elder's gaze to the horizon, where dust clouds rose, moving fast. Riders, dozens of them, their weapons glinting like deadly promises. These carried no gifts. Their intent was clear. "How long do we have?" Caleb asked, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. "Minutes," the elder replied. "But there is something you must understand about Ayanna. She is not just the daughter of 5 tribes. She is the last of her bloodline. Her mother died protecting a secret that could end our conflicts forever. Ayana carries that secret now, and by saving her, you have become its guardian. Caleb's head spun. What secret? The elder reached into a leather pouch and pulled out a small stone intricately carved, shimmering with an inner light. This, he said, the key to the sacred valley, a place where our ancestors hid something that could bring peace or destroy us all if it falls into the wrong hands. Why tell me this? Caleb asked. Because Ayana cannot remember where the valley is. The elder said, his eyes intense. The trauma of her mother's death, the shock of the river, it has fractured her memory. But there is one way to restore it. She must trust completely. And for reasons we do not understand, she trusts you. Before Caleb could respond, the war party crested the hill. Their leader, a scarred warrior named Koruk, raised a spear and let out a cry that chilled the air. His face was painted with black and red, his eyes burning with rage. The peaceful tribes shifted nervously, their hands on their weapons. The air crackled with tension, ready to explode. Koruk's voice cut through the silence. Caleb Sterling, you have meddled in affairs beyond your understanding. The bridge daughter belongs with her people, not a white man who knows nothing of our ways. The elder whispered to Caleb. He believes killing you will break the prophecy and preserve the old ways. He sees change as destruction. Koruk dismounted his warriors, forming a semicircle around Caleb's property. The peaceful tribes moved to protect him, but they were outnumbered. Caleb felt the moment slipping toward bloodshed. Where is the girl? Koruk demanded. Where is Ayana? Movement in the tree line caught Caleb's eye. Ayana stepped out, her presence commanding, her traditional dress now dry and regal. She looked different, stronger, as if the river had awakened something inside her. She walked between the two groups, her eyes locked on Koruk. You want to know where I am? She said, her voice carrying across the clearing. I am exactly where I choose to be. Koruk's spear trembled in his grip. You betray us, Ayana. You let this outsider decide our fate. Ayana stepped closer, unafraid. You think I needed saving yesterday, Koruk? You are wrong. I was not drowning by accident. The words hit Caleb like a punch. What do you mean? He asked, his voice low. She turned to him, her eyes sharp with calculation. I threw myself into that river because I knew you would be there. I knew you would save me. And I knew that act would bring all of you here to this moment. Koruk's face twisted with fury. You manipulated us all. I did what was necessary, Ayana said, her voice steady. The prophecy speaks of choice, but it was never about chance. It was about creating the moment where that choice must be made. The elder stepped forward, his face pale. Your memory loss. It was never real. Ayana's lips curved into a faint smile. My mother taught me many things before she died, including how to make people see what they expect. She reached into her dress and pulled out a larger stone, radiant and pulsing with light. The sacred valley was never lost. I have known its location since I was a child. Caleb's hand twitched toward his gun. Then why the charade? Why drag me into this? Because the prophecy requires a choice from someone outside our conflicts. Ayana set her eyes, locking onto his. Someone who acts from compassion, not tradition or fear. Tell me, Caleb Sterling, what will you choose? Before he could answer, she held up the stone. The sacred valley holds tools created by our ancestors. Tools that could end the white man's expansion or destroy every tribe that refuses to unite. This stone is the key. Koruk took a step forward, his warriors following. Give me the stone, girl. It belongs with those who will protect our people. Protect them by starting a war that will consume everything, Ayanna shook her head. That path leads only to death. The elder's voice was a whisper. And the other path, unity, Ayanna said. All tribes sharing the power equally. But that requires trust proven through an outsider's choice. She extended the stone toward Caleb. This is why you were chosen. Not by chance, but by design. Caleb stared at the glowing stone. If he took it, he'd be choosing sides in a conflict that could reshape the territory. If he refused, blood would spill anyway. Koruk raised his spear. The white man cannot be trusted with such power. I will kill him first. If you kill him, Ayanna said calmly, you prove we are the savages the whites believe us to be. The stone will shatter, and the valley will be lost forever. The tension was suffocating. Every warrior had their weapons ready. One wrong move and this would become a massacre. But then a new sound broke the silence, hooves fast and heavy from another direction. Caleb's heart sank as he saw them cavalry soldiers, at least 30, their blue uniforms stark against the plain rifles glinting in the sun. The choice just got a lot harder. The cavalry rode in with military precision, led by a captain with hard lines etched into his face. Captain Elias Morrison, he called out, his voice sharp. By order of the territorial government, you are trespassing on private land. Disperse immediately or face the consequences. Koruk's warriors shifted their weapons, now aimed at both Caleb and the soldiers. The peaceful tribes raised their arms in defense. In seconds, the clearing became a three-way standoff, a powder keg waiting for a spark. Ayanna still held the stone toward Caleb, her eyes urgent. Choose now, she whispered, before they take the choice from us all. Caleb's mind raced. If he took the stone, he'd be a traitor to his own people. The cavalry would hunt him to the ends of the earth. If he sided with the military, he'd betray the tribes and destroy any chance of peace. But a third option flickered in his mind. Captain Morrison, he called out, stepping forward. These people came in peace. They brought gifts, not weapons. You're about to start a war you don't understand. Morrison's eyes narrowed. Mr. Sterling, you're harboring hostiles. Step away or you'll be charged as an accomplice. Caleb took a breath, his hand closing around the stone in Ayanna's hand. The moment he touched it, a surge of energy hit him like lightning in his veins. Visions flooded his mind. Battle's blood, but also children playing white and native in a world where differences were strengths. The valley wasn't a weapon, it was a test. Captain Morrison, he said, his voice carrying a strange new weight. Lower your weapons. This stone isn't a threat. It's the key to saving this territory. Morrison's finger tightened on his trigger. You have 10 seconds to surrender that object. Koruk's spear rose higher. The white man thinks he can command spirits he doesn't understand. He'll destroy us all. Ayanna stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. He understands more than you think. The stone has chosen him. The stone's energy grew, its light flaring in Caleb's hands. He could feel its truth, its purpose. Captain Morrison, Koruk, all of you listen to me. He said, his voice resonating with a power he didn't fully grasp. The sacred valley isn't what you think. It's a place of judgment. Our ancestors knew this day would come when whites and natives would stand on the edge of war. They created a trial. Koruk's face twisted with rage. You speak lies. The stone doesn't give power. Caleb said, the truth burning in his chest. It measures worthiness. Right now, it's measuring all of us. The stone's light intensified, and something impossible happened. The weapons in everyone's hands grew heavy, as if resisting their purpose. Morrison struggled to keep his rifle raised. What kind of witchcraft is this not witchcraft? Caleb said. Truth. Every one of you is afraid of losing your people, your way of life. But fear makes cowards of us all. Koruk's spear trembled not from weakness, but from some unseen force pulling it downward. This is impossible, he growled. The ancestors were smarter than we thought, Caleb said, understanding flooding through him. They knew any weapon could be stolen, corrupted. So they created something that could only be activated by someone willing to sacrifice everything for peace. The elder's eyes widened. The drowning. It was never about saving Ayana's body. She was drowning in hatred like all of us. Ayana's mask slipped, tears streaming down her face. I thought if I could force the choice, if I could make an outsider choose unity. You can't force unity, Caleb said gently. It has to be chosen freely, by everyone, right now. The stone's light was blinding now. Caleb saw the future in it, blood and fire if they chose wrong, or a world where differences became strengths. Captain Morrison Koruk, look into the light. See what your choices create. One by one they looked. Morrison saw his children growing up in fear, every shadow hiding an enemy. Koruk saw his people driven to extinction by pride, their culture fading in poverty. The elder saw peace born from annihilation, a world with no one left to fight. But they also saw the other path communities where children played together, where languages mixed, where traditions grew stronger through sharing. The visions lasted seconds, but felt like lifetimes. When the light dimmed, silence fell. Morrison spoke first, his voice shaken. That was real. Real as tomorrow's sunrise, Caleb said, the stone's power fading in his hands. The question is, which tomorrow do you want? Koruk lowered his spear, his scarred face torn between belief and doubt. The ancestors' magic shows possibilities. How do we know which path we'll walk? Because we choose it. Ayana said, stepping forward, tears still on her cheeks. Every decision from this moment leads us toward unity or tears us apart. Morrison looked at the warriors he'd once called enemies, seeing fathers and sons. What are you proposing? The elder straightened. A treaty, not words on paper to be broken, but a bond sealed by the stone's witness. Our tribes will share the valley's knowledge with your people. In return, your government will protect our lands and sacred sites forever. I don't have that authority, Morrison said, but his tone hinted at new possibilities. Then we make the promise to each other, Caleb said, the stone warm in his hands. Man to man, family to family. Koruk's grip on his spear loosened. And if the whites break this bond, the stone will know, Ayana said. And the next time someone faces this choice, they'll see what betrayal costs. Morrison removed his hat, running a hand through graying hair. My superiors will call me a traitor for this. Some prices are worth paying, Caleb said, thinking of the girl he'd pulled from the river. But then a rifle cracked from the tree line. The stone shattered in Caleb's hands, fragments flying, as a wave of energy swept the clearing. Colonel Hayes emerged, his rifle smoking, a dozen soldiers behind him. Captain Morrison, step away from the hostiles, he barked. This ends now! But the stone's energy hadn't vanished, it had entered everyone, connecting them. Morrison faced his superior. Colonel, you don't understand what's happening here. I understand plenty, Hayes snapped. You've been compromised. Sterling, you'll hang for treason. Koruk stepped between Hayes and Caleb. If you wish to kill the bridgewalker, you'll kill me first. The elder followed, then Morrison's soldiers, their weapons lowered. Colonel, a young soldier, said we won't fire on peaceful people. Hayes's face contorted. You're all under arrest for mutiny. No, Ayana said, walking toward him with fearless grace. They're under the protection of something greater. She pulled a document from her dress bearing territorial seals, a treaty signed by 5 tribal councils and 3 governors. All we needed was a witness from outside. She looked at Caleb. You. Caleb stared, amazed. You planned this from the start. The drowning was real, Ayanna said softly. My fear was real. But so was my hope that someone would choose to save more than one life. The test was never about the stone. It was about what people do when given the chance to choose unity. Hayes lowered his rifle, doubt creeping into his eyes. The treaty was legal binding. Months later, Caleb stood in the clearing, now the heart of a new settlement. Whites and natives lived side by side, children learning both languages, disputes settled by council. The stone's fragments rested in a memorial, a reminder of the choice that changed everything. Ayanna visited often, her children playing with others. Do you ever regret it? She asked one afternoon. Caleb thought of the man he'd been, a loner who trusted no one. Not for a moment, he said. The treaty wasn't perfect, but it proved that courage and unity could make the impossible inevitable. In the laughter of children who'd never know their parents as enemies, the spirit of the shattered stone lived on.